Let's turn our attention to soccer because the Premier League had one of those wild weekends where the goals were going in crazy numbers. David Meyler is with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads.
Let's start with Manchester United, who looked pretty good when they scored 2 goals in the first 3 minutes of games.
I know, it was unbelievable, wasn't it? What a game to watch. It's just every game I've watched Leeds this season have been exciting, and certainly, United more when they've been away from home rather than home because their away or their home form hasn't been great. They're just good on the counter attack, and you've got to give Solskjaer some credit. He starts Dan James. There are a lot of question marks were raised before the game, and then he puts in a fantastic performance where they just looked to isolate Leeds with, obviously certainly with Bielsa's system of this man-to-man marking, and then you get players one-on-one in situations, and then I felt like Dan James has pays to burn, and it was just an unbelievable game, and United looked really good, and it was a really good game to watch.
Can we learn stuff from games like this that are as crazy as that?
I don't think you can learn a lot from that. No, just even though it finished up 6-2, you're kind of looking back. If you were to be realistic, it could have been 9-4, 9-5. Martial had another handful of chances. I don't think there's a lot you can take from it. Of course, the big thing I think Bielsa he won't change his philosophy. You saw from his post-match interview that he said, this is the way we play. I don't have to justify it. It was almost the opposing manager has neutralized me. I think, the words he used. It's just they need to probably slightly tweak it. And then, of course, when you go to Old Trafford, even though United are struggling at home, it's always a tough place to go. Of course, there's no fans, which, gives teams that little lift. But, for United to score 2 goals after 3 minutes, it's just, it doesn't get better than that.
When you say he needs to tweak it a little bit, Bielsa, what do you mean by that? Because it does seem that it's a little bit more than tweaks that are required to arrest a game that could have ended 12-4.
Yeah, it's just I think the most frustrating thing for him yesterday was United's goals. A lot of them came from mistakes from Leeds players. So if you're not making those mistakes and you're not turning over possession, and then at times they were just too slow to get back. Now, when you have Rashford, Martial, Dan James, people like that with the pace they have, if you do turn over possession and you're not breaking a gut to get back, then you're going to find it difficult and you're going to struggle. And look, that's the reason why United were so good on the counter attack, and they just killed them off as early as they could.
How good are Manchester United at forcing those mistakes?
I think look, you have to give them credit because if you don't press someone, then they're not going to make mistakes. So they did get that right, but a lot of it was just sloppy play from Leeds. But in the games that they've played, they've been exciting to watch. They're great entertainment. Every game they play, you kind of want to watch them. If you were to compare them to, say, Spurs, where they're sitting deep and they're trying to catch teams on the counter attack. United, and the Leeds game was just fantastic. It was one of those you couldn't take your eyes off it because you just felt at any moment either team could score. And even if you're looking at it, when United were so dominant at half time before, you're just feeling like, Leeds could go on here and score a couple of goals. They could come back into the game. You just never knew.
Scott McTominays yesterday with his couple of goals was immediately compared to both Roy Keane and Paul Scholes. So instead of the one, they go for the 2 straight away. Where is this like a landmark moment for him? Is this just a symptom of the madness of the game that he happened to be playing in? What do you put that down to, and how much do you read into a performance like that yesterday, David?
I think you have to take a lot from it, really. If you look at the midfielders United have with McTominays, Fred, Matic, Pogba, Donny van de Beek, of course, Bruno, you're immediately going, it's Bruno and Pogba, and then there's one other. And then you're kind of thinking, well, they've spent a lot of money on Donny van de Beek. How are we going to fit the 3 of them into the system? But if you look at all the big games, he's played McTominays and Fred. So it just shows the trust he has in McTominays. The work he puts in is phenomenal. He's a very unselfish player. You could almost see, when he got his goals, the whole team are, jubilant for him. They're ecstatic because he's just that type of character you want around the place. The one who puts in the hard yards for his teammates. And on top of that, he's a cracking player as well. He's really kicked on leaps and bounds. And it just shows, the trust that Solskjaer has in him, that he's playing him regularly. But not only that, he's standing up and he's putting in good performances, and he's not leaving the manager down.
It's kind of remarkable that we're in this place where Manchester United seem deserving of their place in second place after what was a really poor start to the season. People have questioned their fitness at the start of the season, and I guess there was a lot of excuses made. We obviously had the Spurs hammering of United, and yet here they are. The table doesn't lie, as the old cliche goes, and they're in second place. They've scored more goals than everybody else in the league, with the exception of Liverpool as well. This looks like something that is very much sustainable in terms of them at least finishing second this season.
Yeah, well, look, as you're talking about the table, if you're going to look at the form guys, away from home, they're a fantastic team. Obviously they can afford to sit deep. And like I spoke about the pace that they have with these players, and they've got, with Bruno, Pogba, those kind of fellas in midfield, they can create chances for other players. It's just the big thing is the home form. If they can sort that out and, start picking up more wins at home, then certainly they can be up there, in the top 2-3. But at the moment, I can't really see anyone catching Liverpool, with the form they're in.
We'll talk about Liverpool in just 1 second. It's the City is obviously the other team really who are more likely to finish second, and actually over the course of the season it looks like they could push Liverpool. Or does it? Like, I'm really struggling to work out. I thought 2 weeks ago Manchester City were getting back to a level of form and aggression and control, and then not a great performance in the derby, and then a couple of other not great performances, but a scratchy win at the weekend of the type that title teams are supposed to be able to do. I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, Joe, I'm the exact same as you. I was on with JD, I think, a week or two ago on Saturday, and I kind of felt like Man City were capable of putting together 4 or 5, wins in a row, but just at the moment they're just too hot and cold. Like, you've got to give Southampton, some credit as well. They're a very good team in, fine form, and they're very difficult to play against. But I just sat down and I watched, large part of the second half of Man City. It's just this overemphasis at times to, score the perfect goal. There's times when they were counter-attacking and, De Bruyne puts through Sterling, and then he's trying to square it to Bernardo, and then he's trying to square it again, where it's just thinking, just one, if you put your, foot through the ball and, have a shot, try and score the goal. I just don't know what it is. Look, they are missing Aguero. When he's fully fit and they can get him in a run of games, he will score goals. He's proved that time after time. But I don't know what it is. I remember I watched one game, I think it was when they played the Manchester derby against United. Gary Neville touched on. We're almost talking about, the City team of years ago, kind of, the losses they've had with Kompany, Silva, Yaya Toure, those that we're referring to the older teams, like in cases with Liverpool in the past, with Manchester United. It's, can they turn that corner, and can they mount a serious challenge against Liverpool, who are Premier League champions? That is the question. There's no doubt that they'll probably look to strengthen in January again, because we all know that Man City will spend money if it's available, which it more than likely is. It's just Pep Guardiola needs to find a way to get those players firing at all cylinders and putting in the performance that we know they are capable, because at the moment they just seem very happy to have 75% possession and just keep knocking the ball around without kind of putting teams to the sword.
Yeah, and last week when Liverpool stumbled, you felt like that was a real opportunity for City to put down a marker, and they didn't. And Liverpool's stumble appears to be over. Crystal Palace have been, so far, a very difficult team for most teams to break down, but not that Liverpool team, and not with Minamino scoring. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, I think, like, if you watch that Liverpool game, yes, they won 7-0 or whatever, and it does look flattering. If anyone was, kind of one of them where you turn on the teletext and you just kind of see the result, you think, geez, Liverpool have wiped the floor. Now, of course, 7-0 is a huge result, but Liverpool score goals in the first half at key moments. There were times that, Crystal Palace were in and they should have probably equalised there, got something more out of the game. There was a couple of chances. Ayew could have squared one back to, Zaha. He puts the ball 2 yards behind him. Zaha's coming in off the left wing. He puts a cross in that Ayew doesn't get the end of. There were moments where Palace did get in behind Liverpool and cause them problems, but they just didn't score. And then Liverpool were just going on the pitch and scoring, and they just took it out of sight. And then, of course, there's that, look, it's never nice to be on a pitch when you're getting hammered like that. You could just sense that there was a period in the second half for about 20, 25 minutes where, the Crystal Palace players just kind of gave up. Nobody was closing down. They were kind of all pointing at the other fella. You do it, I'm not doing it. And then even if you look, there was an incident with Van Aanholt and Trent Alexander-Arnold. It was just before Firmino's goal. But, I think Trent kind of kicked the ball towards him and he was kind of kicking off. And then, they take the throw, they turn over possession. The ball goes, I think it's Firmino plays it wide to Robertson. He breaks up the pitch and then it's just boom. Liverpool are so lethal on the counter-attack. But it was just a lot of petulance from Crystal Palace. But it's just one of those games that Roy Hodgson will just have to dust them down and kind of move on from it. If you saw Milahojevic's interview after the game, he said, look, Liverpool conceded 7, United conceded 6. These teams have, had big losses and they've bounced back. So it'll be the next game for Palace will be important.
That Liverpool performance and the fact that they managed to leave Mo Salah on the bench, they managed to obviously bring him on and he makes a bit of a difference himself as well. It's almost like after Jurgen Klopp and his, I guess, a little bit of a trouble with this fixture in particular, this 12:30 on a Saturday fixture, has almost found himself in a little bit of a flow state with his own selections and knowing that no matter who he puts out on the pitch, there's going to be a very close to a top level of a performance from them. Like, even without Diogo Jota being available, he thought that's the only scenario in which Mo Salah can be left on the bench is if Jota's available, and that's not the case. Like, it does seem that even this year there's a greater cohesion amongst the squad and a greater ability to get more from your bench or from your second-string players.
Well, you say second-string players. Yes, if you look at the team that played against Palace, like Van Dijk and Gomez come straight in at centre-half. Now, the question is then, right, do you bring Fabinho forward? And then you've obviously they played Henderson, Keita and Wijnaldum. Like, that three in midfield could play and Fabinho could be on the bench. Of course, you could play Fabinho, push Henderson forward. He chose to rest Salah, but they're missing probably, I would say, 3 there last weekend of their starting 11, their main starting 11. Now, to be able to rest Salah and then bring him on around the 60th mark, and then he just gets 2 goals. It's just, of course, they are missing players. Like, but even then, Jota, even if he was fit and the form he's in, is he starting? Do you know what I mean? It's such a difficult one because Jurgen now has 14, 15 players all playing at such a high level. Where they're turning out performances. I've sat on here with you guys talking about Firmino. Yes, his all-round gameplay is fantastic, but he needs more goals, or he needs to. That's what Jota was bringing, and now Firmino started, to score. It's an exciting time for a Liverpool fan because at the they're really turning out results, and they're all putting in performances, and they're all the front boys are all contributing with goals and assists.
And that's interesting when you compare that to the Manchester City situation, where if Liverpool had a similar injury problem or were missing somebody like Aguero, as talismanic as he is for Manchester City, there is just a sense that this Liverpool team would be able to overcome something like that in a much better way than how Manchester City have seemingly stumbled as a result of a couple of injuries. No,
definitely. That's the big thing. You look, Sterling hasn't put up the numbers that we're used to seeing him doing. Aguero, of course, like I said, has been injured for large periods of the season where, he is someone that guarantees you 20 Premier League goals. Now, the question mark would be, like, if Liverpool were to pick up an injury to Mane or Salah, how would they cope? Like, if they were to lose the two of them, it would be like a massive blow because, look, the goals they score, the work they do, the assists they get, everything is just... And then you look at, like, even the last day when he brings, Mane off, there was a lot raised about, look, he looks angry about it, he looks annoyed at Klopp. But that's his elite mentality. That's the one kind of like, hold on, I've not scored in 9 games. I'm after scoring today. I want more, And then, of course, Salah comes on, gets 2 goals. Of course, there's that little bit, as much as we laugh and joke about watching the fullbacks where they have this little competition between, who gets more assists. There's no doubt that Mane and Salah are looking at one another saying, I want to outscore, him, which is good as long as it doesn't overboil, which I think Jurgen Klopp will be able to manage because if you remember a few weeks ago, he took Salah off. I think it was against Fulham and he wasn't happy either. Look, Liverpool are in a good place and, they're, like I said, their players are, in fine form.
On Spurs then, lost yesterday to Leicester City. It's been a bad few days for them. Is this a blip, David, or has this been coming for a little while, do you think?
I think the performance of Spurs was kind of like, the Spurs that had played a few seasons ago. They were obviously after, dropping points against Palace, losing to Liverpool in the manner which they did. And then it was kind of like, it was refreshing to kind of, like I said, it looked like Mourinho had his mojo back, that kind of like, those mind games, the performance they were putting in. They just came unstuck against Leicester. And then there were periods when, they're in the game, but you can't afford to give away penalties like they did. Aurier, it's just, I didn't watch the full game. I saw, a good chunk of it, but like there were times when I watched, Aurier against Mane where, he nullified him. He was firing, and like he put in an outstanding performance against Liverpool, and then he'd go and he'd make them mistakes. And then when you've got players like, Jamie Vardy, who's, taking penalties or whatever, he's 9 times out of 10 he's going to score. And then it just suited, Leicester. I did see Vardy speak after where the game plan where they were going to kind of drop to their own halfway line and leave Tottenham have possession and go after them. It's just at times when Tottenham seem to have too much of the ball, they kind of come unstuck where they're not creating chances and they're just getting punished on counter-attacks. So Mourinho's a bit similar to Bielsa in a way. He's going to have to tweak a little bit to find a way to get them when they do have large amounts of possession that, they don't get caught in counter-attacks, and then they do punish teams when they get opportunities. Because, look, Tottenham have fantastic forwards in Heung-min Son and Harry Kane. They shouldn't have to play counter-attacking football in order to beat teams.
It's not the end for Spurs, though, is it? Or because Liverpool are back into this, we're going to win every game pretty easily and we're irresistible. Can you afford to be beaten by Leicester and still be title contenders?
Yeah, but you could on the flip side of that, Tottenham could turn around. A Tottenham fan could turn around to you and say, Liverpool were beaten by Aston Villa.
A long time ago now, though. That's the thing. Since then, Liverpool kicked in. True,
but at the same time, it is. Look, it's a tough last 3 games where you only pick up 1 point. Of course, you don't want to be getting beat if you're going to be serious title contenders. But I never felt that Tottenham would win the Premier League. I do feel they'll still be up, thereabouts, pushing for second and third. I don't think any other team have enough for Liverpool. But if you look at the table from now, and then if you look at it probably in the middle of January with these amount of fixtures coming, with a busy Christmas period, teams, whichever team can kind of go, you play Stephen's Day, you'll play the 28th, you'll play the 1st. If you can pick up, 3 wins there will be massive movements in the table. So it's not the end of the world. It's what are Spurs. There'll be a question mark over their character. How can you bounce back? Do you know what I mean? You have to get back to winning ways and get that done as quick as you can.
All right, well, let's see. Good stuff, David. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.